Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. If I could do an accent, I'd be opening this review with "Good day, mate," but I can't because that was not even close to Australian. But we are a horror movie podcast. Every week we talk about horror movies, and this episode is your bonus Patreon vote episode of the month, where our patrons voted between 4 films. All 4 in this case came from The Crypt, which is another Patreon thing where all of our $5 patrons and up can submit films to this kind of wish list or to-do list for Screams. And we picked 4 of those movies, we put them in a vote for our patrons, and they voted on which one they want. And the winner was Wolf Creek, the Australian film from 2005. I'm Peter, by the way. It's weird that I skipped over that. But Tim's also here. Tim's the co-host. There's Tim. Tim's over there. He's there. He's that side. How you feeling, Tim? You good? You happy?
Am I happy? Have I ever been happy?
That's a good point. You make an excellent point.
Maybe 4 or 5 times in my life. You got me thinking though. What tier is it that you can add to the Crypt?
Same as the voting tier, $5 tier.
Yeah, because I feel like we should add a tier where we will add you, well, not you, but the Patreon person. We'll add them to the Crypt.
Wait, what? I'm confused. What did you just say? The Patreon person will do what? What's this new tier?
Well, we'll have to figure it out. Maybe like $25 or something. But we can actually add the patron person to the Crypt.
Oh, the patron.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, we kill him and then we put the body in the Crypt.
So they're paying us $25 for us to kill them and put them in a crypt. Okay, that's why I make that. You confused me there, Timmy. I wasn't sure where that was going. So yeah, we'll start spoiler free.
And then maybe we'll review the dead body.
Is that basically going to be like our own version of the autopsy of Jane Doe? We're just going to do an autopsy and be like, there's some finger marks behind the temple, some blunt force maybe.
That could be fun. Now I gotta say, this movie was a little scary for me because I'm gonna be visiting Australia soon.
You are? When are you going to Australia?
Yeah.
When's this happening?
Next year in January.
Oh, okay. You have not, because I thought you were going to say like, oh, I'm going like next month. Like, we've not arranged for this, Tim. You didn't tell me you were taking time off the schedule.
See ya. And then it's just taking pictures of like me in my room with a little like Australia backdrop.
Tim's gonna get a green screen and learn how to use the green screen so he can put kangaroos behind.
No, I'm going to Australia next year, so this was a little bit of a warning, I suppose, to me.
Try not to get killed by anything, because Australia is full of animals and plants that are the most deadly things on the planet.
Hey, why do you think I'm going?
See, I'm serious. Every time like I see like a forum post or something, it's like, oh, a new deadly like plant or something found, and there'll be a picture of this like, and it'll look deadly. It'll be this like demonic looking plant that came straight out of hell. And every single time it's like, oh yeah, it's found in this part of Australia. I'm like, of course it's Australia, because everything in nature that wants to kill you is in Australia.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll run into the mythical Yowie, which of course is the Australian Bigfoot. Who knows?
Excellent. Australia's a weird place, you know that? I don't mean that. This is nothing to insult on Beckham, but it's weird to me how weirdly similar Australia is in terms of the people to the UK. There's a lot of crossover in how they speak, obviously with a different accent. Sure. But like watching this movie, they use word like bloke. They refer to like guys as blokes, and I'm like, this is weird. Australians have a lot of the same words. It's odd how Australia is kind of like a distinct cousin to the UK. It's odd.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all descended from British criminals, so that makes sense. But,
see, the mistake they made with that whole plan of putting all the criminals on an island, which I actually think is a solid plan, is they just didn't, what they had to do was neuter them first, because because obviously once they have kids, the kids aren't criminals, they're innocent. So we can't just keep treating them like criminals. But if you neuter them first and then just treat it like Escape from New York, but Australia,
Yeah.
That's a fine plan.
Yeah, at one point, the guy in the movie, he says, "Bob's your sister," which I've never heard. I've always heard "Bob's your uncle."
Yeah, I've never heard sister
Bob's
either.
your sister.
I wonder if that's an Australian thing or if it's just him being weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it sounds like it's someone trying to crack a joke based on Bob's your uncle, like, because why would you say Bob's your sister? Bob's a dude's name.
Yeah.
That's weird. So, had you seen this movie before, Timmy? Was this your first time? Or?
Oh yeah, I saw it before.
Yeah, I saw it back. This was like in my teen DVD days. Like, this was
yeah.
Back when I was about 12, 13, like I really started collecting DVDs with whatever money I had from wherever I got money from at that age. I can't remember. And I bought in a lot of DVDs, and this came out in 2005. So it'd been probably soon after it came out in DVD where I bought it because people are talking about this Wolf Creek movie. Let's see what it's like.
I think at this time I would have been working at Blockbuster, and same thing. Like when it came out on DVD, like a lot of people were talking about it, so I was like, oh, I'll check this out.
Yeah. The movie's pretty simple. It's your typical group of characters, not teens in this case, it's 20-somethings, but they're out on a trip out in the outback, and they're going to visit this big crater where a meteor hit a long, long, long time ago. As the character so delightfully tells us, it was the impact was like 200 nuclear bombs going off at the same time.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's rock and roll.
Yeah.
So there's a giant crater, but of course they have trouble, and basically there's a crazy person out in the outback who takes them captive, and it's your typical. It's very much your Australian Texas Chainsaw or something to that effect, or whatever you want to call it.
And even to the point where it talks about being based on a true story.
Yeah. And I didn't look into it, but I'm going to assume that that's a very loose statement.
Well, I mean, I guess we can't really get into it without kind of technical spoilers, but I have questions about that once you get to the kind of the stuff from the end. Sure.
Maybe we'll even just look it up during the review. Why not? That may be fun. So that's the basic gist of the film. So Tim, did you like Wolf Creek at the time when you first saw it, and has your feelings changed dramatically one way or the other now?
So I actually did not like it when I first saw it. And then I rewatched it last night, and I can say I still don't like it. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like I don't think it's a bad made, or that sounded weird. It's not like a poorly made movie. Like the acting is fine and everything. But I think maybe more, not so much that it's a bad movie. It's just not a movie that's necessarily for me. It doesn't really line up with my tastes. I do think it takes way too long in the beginning for it to start. Like, getting to the point. It's like, there's nothing wrong, obviously, like, with setting up the characters and stuff. I feel like it was like, 45, like 50 minutes before we actually get to, what like kind of the plot and like, drive of the movie is. And I don't know. And I feel like it might be fine if you're getting, more setup and insight into the characters before then. But I feel like so much of it is just kind of plodding along with these characters that honestly don't really have much personality. They just kind of seem like just people going on a trip. I never really got a sense of too much of what they're like. And also, I just really don't like the direction of the movie. It's very, has a very like kind of shaky handheld feel to it. A lot of like cuts between like, now we're looking through the car. Now we're focusing on the people. Now we're back through looking through the car and stuff. And I don't know if you're supposed to maybe if it's supposed to convey the feeling of like being watched or something, I guess, but I don't know, it doesn't really do much for me. So I don't know. It's a fine movie, but just I'm not crazy about it.
Tim's first complaint: it cuts between shots. I don't like that in a movie. It cuts between various shots.
But the way it does it, though, it's like so. But he does it like so often, and it's like so frenetic. It kind of takes me out of the movie, honestly.
Did you hear that, Greg McLean? writer, director, producer. Tim's not happy with how you cut your movie.
The name sounds familiar. Has he done other stuff, like the other recent stuff that we've seen?
I'm fairly sure that he's done like everything that's been called Wolf Creek, because I think he worked on everything. Let me have a look here. Let me see. He did Wolf Creek 2. He worked on the Wolf Creek TV show. The Wolf Creek TV show, by the way, interestingly, I've not seen it, but I heard the premise recently, and I thought, oh, it actually sounds kind of interesting, because it's actually a character who knows or is related to one of the characters from the movie or the second movie, and it's about them coming for revenge. So they're kind of hunting the bad guy down, like through the outback, which is actually intriguing as a premise.
The TV show is on Shudder, and I think I tried watching like 5 minutes of it, and it was so bad. I like shut it off. It was really bad. That's
fair enough. I've not seen any of it. He did the Belko experiment. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. Yeah.
More notably, though, for us, he did something else, which went down as one of the worst things we ever reviewed on this show. He directed.
I know it's not Green Inferno.
He directed The Boy. I'm kidding. No, it wasn't The Boy. Tim probably knows who that director is anyway. I probably can't trick Tim there. No, he directed The Darkness with Kevin Bacon.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, that movie.
Was bad.
That movie was bad. So, really, really, really bad. So that's actually interesting. He directed that.
Be careful with that phrase, because it sounds like you're making fun of your ace co-host.
Joe, it's funny. She thought that once as well. I said Terabad, and she said, "What do you mean Terabad?" And I'm like, "No, as in terrible and bad. Terabad." All right, fine. Is this an accent thing? Is it because my accent just makes it sound a little bit the vowels harder to pick up? Maybe, yeah.
Maybe say off a bad or something.
Off a bad. Oh dear. Okay, so how did I feel about the movie? I guess that's what we were getting to. Do you know, like, I remember thinking it was pretty decent from when I first saw it. Now, that said, I always remembered agreeing with one of the big things you said there, is that the first half kind of sucks. The first half takes a long time, and I don't particularly like the characters that much. They're just kind of like blank slates, and don't have much going for them. I definitely remembered, and I felt this again watching it now, is that there's some stuff early on where it was just like a montage of them like partying at a pool. And I remember just being like, oh, this is just annoying to watch. I was not into it. I did not care about their shouting at each other while drunk, or the fact that the guy and one of the girls might be into each other. Like, really don't give a shit. The characters are kind of nothing. The actors are terrible, though. The actors feel natural enough, at least. They don't feel like they're hamming it up.
Yeah.
But, so, but I remembered liking the back half well enough. Like, I remember, once they actually get to the point where they've been taken to this location, and then the actual horror stuff that happens, I remember being at least fairly, maybe not in love with it, but like fairly into it and enjoyed it well enough at the time. Yeah. So I was curious to see how I was going to feel, because I got the impression you didn't like it from things you'd said to me, and I was curious to see how I was going to feel watching it again, because I've only seen it the once before. I'd seen it back in like 2005, 2006, in that sort of range, whenever the DVD came out, and I was curious to see how I was going to feel about the back half of the movie watching it again. And the funny thing is that I don't know if the first half dragged as much for me this time, just because I knew it was going to drag in a weird way. Like, I was expecting it to be like, oh, get to the good stuff. But it almost wasn't as bad, because I thought it was going to be even worse. The second half, I think's fine. Like, it's not great. It's... like, there's some fun moments. The standout is definitely the actor playing the bad guy. He's the reason why the movie has a sequel and has a TV show, because and probably the reason why people were talking about when it came out, because he has he's a different kind of personality. Because he's Australian, it's an Australian horror movie. It has a different feel to a lot of other types of horror villains. He has a completely different accent. His sense of humor that he has is very different to a lot of other horror villains. So he kind of stands out. He's definitely the memorable character in the movie, because the three leads, the three victims, are not memorable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So that's okay. That said, there's a lot of weird elements to it, and the way it's paced in the back half is very strange to me. I can't really talk about a lot of it until spoilers, to talk about how it focuses on certain characters at certain times and how it kind of transitions into the horror sections a little bit weird in one way, even though I kind of like part of it. It's definitely not like a home run. There's definitely a couple of generic elements, but there's also, you know, like I think overall I would say the movie is decent with a couple of standout things that is why it's memorable. It's why people talk about it, but it's not something that I'd be like, oh, it's a must-see horror movie from the 2000s that you have to see. It's one of, you know, they're anything like that.
Yeah, like, I think when it came out, people are treating it like it's a new classic, which I definitely don't think it is. But I'm kind of on the same page, maybe like a little less than you, but you know, I don't want to act like I hate it. Like, it's not like, oh man, this is such a horrible movie, how can anyone like this garbage? It's like, no, it's fine. You know, it's just like, you know, there isn't really much to stand out. You know, and there's definitely stuff, a lot of stuff that, you know, could have made it better. Like, once it does get to the horror stuff, like, yeah, I think for the most part, that's okay. You know, in between like okay and good, but yeah, just all together as a movie, it's not great or anything, but it's also not like super horrible either.
There's some decent horror moments in the back half, and yeah, it actually did overuse one trope. Actually, there's a trope that happens like 3 times in the back half that kind of bugged me, but more on that in spoilers. As far as talking about spoiler free, I mean, honestly, there's so little kind of setup that there's actually not a whole lot to talk about plot wise, spoiler free. So like I say, I think the acting is fine. No one sticks out as being like a horrendous actor. They're just very kind of natural, almost to the point where they feel like they're on a reality TV show, which is why they're kind of annoying.
Yeah. And like, kind of like I was saying before, it's totally fine to, you know, have like a lot of characters set up. Like, you know, not every horror movie needs to, you know, like go right into it in, you know, 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. I think the problem with this movie, like you were saying earlier, is that the characters are just such like blank slates. They're not interesting. It's like, you know, if you want to have like characters set up, that's fine, but you know, there's nothing really to these characters other than like, all right, they're young 20-somethings that want to party. Like, that's about it. Like,
all they want to do is drink. That is like all they talk about. And the thing is like, they feel realistic, so I can't really fault it in that sense. They feel like realistic people, but they're realistic, uninteresting people.
Yeah, because like they're not played as like over, like when you think of party people, you usually think of like kind of, you know, over the top assholes or something, and they're definitely not that. Like, they're not, you know, they're not played as like those kind of jerky, you know, party kids. But again, I don't know, maybe that would have made them a little more interesting or something, because they just seem like very kind of normal people.
I don't think they have to be over the top, but I think there seemed to be an effort here to make them just as down to earth and like normal drinking people as possible. When I think that's, you know, there's a reason why movies typically try to make characters a bit more interesting and make them have kind of more, you know, like either witty conversations or give them some character traits that kind of stick out. Because even though that may feel like more of a movie thing, that's what makes characters memorable and interesting. And whereas these characters, I really feel like I was watching a group of people who were like on like a you know, Big Brother or you know, pick your reality TV show. It felt like 3 really normal people, but really normal in a really boring way, where I don't care about them. I don't particularly want to watch more of them. There's a reason why reality TV bores the crap out of me, because real people are dull. Characters, you know, are interesting. They have traits if they're written well, and they have arcs, and they have these things. Because they don't have arcs in this movie, and that's not necessarily a big problem in a horror movie. And arguably, once this movie gets to the back half, it doesn't matter as much anymore, because now they're just trying to survive, and that's okay because it's a survival movie. But the first half of the movie is not that. The first half of the movie is them in a car, or it's them drinking or sitting at a campfire or whatever. And it's like, you could cut that thing down. You could cut the first half. The first, like, I think I checked the time when they're being towed, and that was about 40 minutes. I think the first 35 minutes you could probably cut down to about 15 or less, quite happily, and lose nothing of value.
Yeah, it's already like pretty short movie. I think it was like, what, 98 minutes or so. But I mean, yeah, if you, I don't know, maybe, yeah, cut out like 20, 25-ish minutes, and I don't know, maybe add another 5 or 10 or something of maybe more horror stuff. I don't know, that probably could flow a little better.
Even if you don't add anything in the horror stuff, I think if you just cut 20 minutes and get it down to 78 minutes, you may have a much tighter movie.
Sure.
We get to the horror stuff quick enough that you don't feel, that bad about it. You're just kind of like, bit of setup, and here we are. Something bad happens. Because honestly, you could almost just start with them at the meteor crater. You could just start there, and just like cut everything that came before that. Like, you almost wouldn't need anything, because there's like a first kiss that happens there. You just get I think just them having their first kiss would tell you everything you need to know about their relationship. You don't really need the build up to it, which is essentially just like one conversation between the two girls about how she's into him, and then one conversation between the second girl and him saying, hey, she likes you, why don't you like her back, blah 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 blah. And that's basically it. Like, all of that could go. I mean, there's one scene where they go to like a gas station, and it's like, oh, there's some weird locals who kind of make some sexist remarks about the girls, and like, I mean, the scene's okay. It's the closest thing that there is before bad things happen, that there's a sign that something bad is going to happen. It's not like Texas Chainsaw where you have the hitchhiker right away who sets like an eerie tone, and it's like, oh, something's unsettling, something's not quite right out here. That's the closest this movie has to that. But even that's like a good 15-20 minutes into the movie before you get there, and then it's another 15-20 minutes before you get to the actual, oh shit, we're in danger now. So so first half is a bit rough in that sense. Second half's okay. It has a couple of good horror moments. That's how I'd sum up the spoiler free. So we'll go into spoilers then. Before we do, though, this is a good time to tell you about patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can support the show and everything we do here by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 per month. And of course, if you do that, you get to see bonus episodes. Every month you get one exclusive episode for patrons at the $1 tier. And the last episode we did was Beyond the Seventh Door, which was a Canucksploitation movie, although you never guessed that from the accents, because the main dude's from Yugoslavia. But you get that was like the 5th or 6th one we've done, so you get a whole back catalogue of these bonus episodes, and you get other stuff from other shows, and also at the higher tiers you get to do things like vote, much like people did for this episode, and some other stuff too. So go to Patreon and have a look and see if it tickles your fancy. So spoilers for the movie. So they go out of this crater, they come back from it after camping out for the night. There's very little to say about anything that comes before this, because it is just them drinking, interacting with locals in that one scene,
jumping in a pool,
that's all it is. And don't get me wrong, I do like the idea of them, like, like their car battery's dead and their watches are also dead. And they're like, oh shit, we have to spend the night in the car, we're kind of like trapped and isolated out here alone. I was like, okay, this is a good setup, this is an interesting kind of, okay, we're just out here on our own and it's nighttime. And I do like the shots where it's like nighttime and you just see like the headlights coming towards them, and it's like, oh, who is this someone dangerous? Is this someone, like this is where the movie kind of picks up, because it starts to like have feelings of tension. It's like, oh, okay, they're in like a really sort of dangerous place now where anyone could be a threat. But of course, at first he's very friendly, as Mick. He's like, oh, help you out, I'll give you a jump start. Oh no, your other parts are dead, I can tow you back to my camp and fix your car up there because I've got spare parts. And they're very hesitant at first, but they agree to go. It's this long ride back. They sit around the campfire drinking just some water, and they all go to sleep while he's fixing the car. And when they wake up, we wake up with Liz tied up in a room. And it's a very abrupt transition to, obviously there's a little bit of tension where they don't know if they can trust them first and things like that, but it's a very interesting transition, I thought, to the actual horror section of the movie, because they literally just go to sleep, and she wakes up. There's not like a big crescendo that happens. There's not a big like sort of like moment where he turns on them. She just opens her eyes, and then it cuts to a wide shot of her, and she's tied up with her feet and hands bound. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting it happens so sort of like quietly like that. Where it's like, no, he just tied them up when they were asleep.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like other movies would maybe have like, you know, the inkling to, you know, because you know, we're assuming here that he, you know, poisoned something in their drinks or gave them something that, you know, would make them pass out. And I feel like most movies would have, you know, the characters start to realize that, and then they would be kind of fumbling around, like, what did you give us? And then just see like his feet standing in front of him or something. But I like that we don't get any of that, and it is a more subtle kind of, you know, transition to, you know, her waking up.
Because they all do lie down to go to sleep. It's not like they just pass out where they're sitting. It's like they're going to sleep anyway. This drug presumably just makes sure they stay out while he's tying them up and dragging them around or whatever.
And I would assume that they were probably. Did you think that like they were like passed out for like maybe a day or something? Because it seems like it was already late at night, but then she wakes up and it's still night. Yeah,
I got the impression it was maybe a full day, which makes sense if he drugged them. Like, you know, it probably knocked them out for that long. And she just wakes up in the little shed, and she gets up, and she's able to use a piece of glass to cut herself free, and she sort of sneaks out the window, and she sneaks up to one of the main sort of like, you know, buildings here. So it's all these little kind of, this is like a garage kind of building, or a workshop, maybe a better term for it. And she looks in the window, and obviously the other girl, Kestie, is like tied to a post, and Mick's like, you know, he's got this like really weird, obnoxious laugh that he kind of has, where he's like,
I do really like his voice. Like, obviously he has the Australian accent, but even, you know, the accent aside, he has like kind of just an interesting, like, kind of weird, raspy, throaty kind of voice, which is funny because it can work really well as like, you know, like a nice guy. Like when they're all sitting around the campfire, he actually is like, I think like, you know, genuinely kind of likable. Like, and I guess even before that too, like when they're talking about him, and he's kind of like, you know, saying stuff like, you know, he's like, oh, you want to go north, but I'm going south. Okay, yeah, I see. I see where that's a problem. You know, like it's, I think though he actually is able to pull off like, you know, kind of like a nice friendly guy. But I mean, maybe it's because we're watching a horror movie, but like you can kind of tell that there's like a little bit of a sinister, maybe weird undertone to it.
I think works for the movie because I think if you're in that situation where you're trapped out in the middle of nowhere and this stranger comes up, you're, even no matter how nice they might appear, you're going to be kind of skeptical. Like they could take advantage of us really easily right now if he wanted to, and he does clearly. But no, and he's doing all these things, and you know, we see like another like old dead body up, you know, hanging up somewhere, and it's heavily implied that he's going to rape Kestie. It never happens in the movie. We never see it because of interference. But you know, he's grabbing his crotch. He's like, you know, he's sort of doing tongue motions, and he's like, oh, "We're going to get to know each other, right?" And you know, things like that. And because at one point he actually like rubs her head into his crotch. He's still got his jeans on. He's not like naked or anything, but he's just kind of doing it to like mock her and humiliate her. He's you know, because he has this thing where he's always talking like he's friendly, even though he's got someone tied up and he's going to torture them, rape them, and whatever else. He's always very like. You know, because he's holding like a sniper rifle and he's got it aimed at her, and he takes a shot, but it doesn't click. He's like, that's funny that, you know, won't go without the bolt. And I say, oh, I've got the bolt done now though. And he's always kind of joking and like doing these little things about what he's doing, and he does fire a shot. It doesn't hit her, but he fires a shot, and he's like, you should have seen the look on your face, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes it works, and like sometimes it doesn't. I think there was like maybe one or two times where he makes like a pun or a joke or something. Like I think he had some joke about, you know, the other woman that was like chained up and skinned and stuff. Like well, I guess not skinned, but just like killed. Then he makes like some joke about like oh, like she used to give good head or something before she lost hers or something dumb like that. I'm like, all right, this is like a little too much. Like, come on.
but it is followed up, I think, with a little line where he says she lasted a few months, and I'm like, whoa, okay, that sounds really dark. Like, the idea that he's going to like keep her alive long enough, as long as he can, until he just kills her.
One thing I will give it credit for that I did like about it is I do like how who's the other girl, Liz?
Yeah,
it's like running around.
Yeah,
I do like how she was actually like proactive, and she does get the upper hand on him, which was kind of cool. That you usually don't see that. Like it made him feel like that maybe they're not as helpless as you want them to be, because. Yeah, she definitely does get some good like shots on him.
Oh yeah, no, he feels like he's not like an indestructible person, so basically, Liz causes a distraction by like setting fire to something outside, and she sneaks in. She lets Kestie know she's there, but ultimately when he comes back in, she picks up the rifle he had, and he tries to like sort of laugh. I was like, I only put one bolt in it. Like it's fine. Like but of course he's lying, and she takes a shot and like hits him in the side of the neck, which he goes down. Of course though, I do like that Liz doesn't know how to use a gun. We had some internet troubles there. So there's a weird cut here. That's part of the review. But what I was saying is that I like that that Liz kind of doesn't know how to use the gun properly. That she, she knows how to shoot the trigger or pull the trigger, but once she has to actually reload or do the next step, she kind of struggles. She doesn't know what to do, and it felt very realistic. It felt like someone who'd seen it on movies and on TV, but never actually worked one herself. And it felt, because I've never used a gun, but I've seen it on TV, so it's like I know in theory I know what it looks like. But she struggles, and she ends up just hitting him over the back of the head with the gun. It's just, so I don't. I kind of like I feel like the realism in the first half hurts it a little bit because it's just kind of dull, but the realism in some of the stuff in the second half makes it a bit more interesting from a horror movie perspective, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And it was funny because she shoots him, and he kind of immediately falls down, and then right away, both me and my wife, we just started chanting like "stab him, stab him, stab him," like because obviously a horror movie, especially when it's like you have half an hour left or whatever. Like, come on, this isn't the end. Just really go to town on him.
Yeah, it's because it's like, okay, you've got a clear window here where he's not moving. If you just grab his knife and start stabbing him in the back, you will kill him, and he will not hurt you. That'll be the end of it right now. But they don't make that choice. They try and go out. They go to the car, and this is the first time of 3 that something happens, which is fine once, maybe even fine twice, but it happens 3 times in this movie where a character goes into a car and gets really upset because the keys aren't in the ignition. So it happens here where they go in and there's no keys, so she has to go back into the body and get them from his pocket, which she does. But once they leave, he comes storming out with a shotgun and starts blasting it into the windshield. And of course he has other cars. He chases them down. They're in his truck, and they get to they almost drive off a cliff, and they actually get to the edge, and they get out and they push it over to make it look like they've went over the cliff themselves, try to make him think at least for a while that they're already dead. Whilst they, there's a whole scene here where they're hiding over the edge of the cliff with him looking down at the truck, and it's a fine little sequence. There's nothing wrong with it. This is again this is the second time where when he's going down to check the wreckage, they get up and go into his car, and there's no keys, and they get mad because there's no keys. So that's the second time that happens.
No one ever just leaves the keys in the ignition. That's not something you do.
No, that's true. I think this is the only time I think out of the 3 where I at least buy that they might think they would be in the ignition, because he's literally just stopped and got out of the car to look down the edge of the cliff.
Sure.
The engine's still, at least I thought the engine was still running. It actually wasn't. Obviously it wasn't because the keys were in there, but it kind of felt like that.
And they're still super close to his camp or whatever. Because at first I thought that they had maybe driven a little farther, but then they pretty much go right back to his camp, which Which, yeah, I gotta imagine it's not like they've been walking a ton of time or anything.
Yeah, they're just down the road. They go back, and like Liz tells, because Christie's a bit out of it, after being tortured for a little bit, and she's like, okay, you hide here, stay here, and hold your breath, or not hold your breath, sorry, find your breath, catch your breath, and I'll go and see if I can get another car, because it seems like he has more. And sure enough, she finds this big warehouse full of cars. And then finds a room full of camping equipment, and it's very clear that he's had other victims. Like, he's gotten a bunch of tourists over the years, and even though this one family has there's a bunch of camcorders, and she watches one, and it's this family who basically the same thing happened to them. Their battery died, and he came to help. This is something he does. Given that their watches also stopped, I wondered, is he actually causing it, or is it a natural phenomenon that happens here, and he's just taking advantage of it? I wasn't sure on that.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard to. I don't know how he would do that himself. That seems like a little much, but
if it was just a car battery, then I'd just assume it was him. He was just draining the battery. But because it's also their watches, it was making me think is there something to do with this area? There's a natural occurrence where electric devices get drained or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think he says something later on where that seemed to imply that he did, mess with their car. He says something like, "Oh, do you know how long it took me to, strip that part from your car or whatever?" So yeah, I got the feeling that he at least did that, and then I'm assuming maybe the watch thing is just maybe because of that part of where they're at. Maybe that's just a natural occurring thing.
Maybe.
And then this kind of and it kind of ties to in the beginning, like a lot of these movies, you get a little text saying oh, based on a true story, and then it gives you a little background, and they say something like 30,000 people a year disappear from the Australian outback or whatever, and only 90% of them are ever found or something like that. So you kind of get the idea that this is something that not super common, but does happen to people, and there's definitely these instances that people are never found, and that it's something that he's probably been doing for quite a while.
Yeah. So you see this, and then she watches, because at one point in the movie, before when they stop for gas, Ben, the guy in the group, recorded some footage, and she sees the guy's truck in the background, so implying that he saw them there and sort of prepped his plan from there, knowing that he had victims. So it's really simple stuff. It's it's not this doesn't come off too cheesy. It could do. I feel like this. It's a little bit very neat how this footage captures exactly what she needs to see. But
exactly, yeah. But
it's not super. I've definitely seen much worse in movies when it comes to dun dun dun. Sure. He was there the whole time or something like that. So yeah. But I will say it's at least a little bit surprising that Liz dies first, because she's clearly been presented to as essentially the main character up until this point, and
she's the main character. She's been the most proactive. She's probably the one that's least harmed at this point. So yeah, you do get that kind of feeling if someone's going to be the final girl, it's going to be her. Yeah,
and she finds some keys. She gets into one of the cars, and it takes a while to find the right key. But once she gets the engine going, you just hear the laugh. You're like, and you just see him in the back seat, and then he stabs her to the back seat. And this scene's actually quite brutal, because he's like, well, I don't want you to run away anymore, so I'm just going to make sure you can't walk. And he actually uses his giant knife, because she found a little Swiss Army knife that she's got and she's trying to defend herself with. And he quotes what the other guy said earlier on, what Ben said to him at the campfire when he was kind of making fun of him, where he's like, that's not a knife. Nah, this is a knife. He has that. And then he's like, well, I'm going to make you a head and a stick, and what he means by that is he's going to sever her spinal column from her legs. It's essentially paralyze her. So he does this kind of rough scene where he just digs his knife in and kind of severs it. I think one of the things that I do kind of like about this villain is that he's not obviously I love slasher movies and I love themed villains who always use the same weapon or whatever. I kind of like how this guy does just use a mixture of knives and guns. He's not dedicated to one style of thing. He feels like a guy who's well versed in a number of different ways to hurt and kill people, and he just uses whatever's useful at the time, kind of thing.
He does Yeah, he does feel like a little bit more of a believable, insane killer.
So she doesn't actually die. She's seemingly just left paralyzed. But it's interesting though, because at this point I was thinking, well, where's Greg? I think we get like one shot of Greg in the middle of all this. It's when they're running back to the camp. I think you see one shot of him just sort of like strung up, and we come back to Kestie at this point. And now Mick's going to be looking for her, and Kestie runs out onto the road. It's like daylight now, the sun's come up, and she's like going down the road, and she's sort of, the poster, there's two posters for this movie. One where she's running down the road, and one where she's sort of like, sitting down, sort of looking all bloody and like messed up on the road. And this old man pulls over and like, oh my god, you look terrible, like, let me go in the back seat, I'll get you a blanket. And I'm like, just drive, man, just drive. Like, he's coming. Just drive. And he's going to the trunk to get like some stuff for her, and he pulls out like a thermos. He's got like some coffee or some soup or whatever, and he puts that on the top of the car while he's getting some stuff out there. And when he closes the door, you see like the thermos is leaking. There's like a bullet holes went through it. And to the movie's credit, I actually said to myself, like, wait, he didn't hear the gunshot? Like, what the hell? But to the movie's credit, I think it does a good job of like letting you hear the next one, and letting you hear that it only really has a sound like closer to the shot itself. Like from his distance, he just sort of, it's a very faint sound. And like, while I still think you'd hear the bullet going through the thermos, it made it less... Like, because my first thought was, well, that's stupid. Why didn't he hear that? Like a bullet just went through the thermos in front of him. Surely he would have heard that. It's not like there's a lot of other sound going on. But I think that the next gunshot kind of made it clear kind of what the sound is like in this space and how far away he is. But he snipes the guy. The guy's dead. And this is the third time in the movie where Kestie, realizing that something's happening, gets out of the car, sees that he's lying there dead, runs into the driver's seat, and then there's like, shit, there's no keys in the ignition. And we know where they are. They're in the boot. They're in the trunk. The boot's what the UK call it, the trunk, just for the record. So she has to go out and get the keys and run back. And at this point, Mick's driving towards her in one of his cars. And she runs back to the front seat, gets the car going, and starts driving off. And we get something of a car chase, which, like, how many horror movies do we watch that have a car chase? Not a lot, although we're doing another one today that kind of does. And I did kind of like how Mick plays with her in this scene, where he kind of like, his car's much faster, and he drives up alongside her and just starts waving at her. Like, like he's someone who likes to be menacing, but he's happy to do it in a jokey way. He's not like... he's not like, I feel like he's jokey but not in a stupid way. Like, it feels like it's just his personality. Oh sure, yeah. It's not like too over the top where he's like like a Freddy Krueger type where he's making like these crazy jokes or really stretching these puns, but he is definitely like goofy enough where he's having a little bit of fun at it. He definitely feels like sort of like a normal, well, not normal, but like he feels like, I've definitely met older dudes like who are in their 50s or 60s who try and joke with young women as if they can get away with it. But this feels like it's taking it to the extreme where he's like kidnapping and torturing people. But like, it definitely gave me that vibe where I feel like I've met like, obviously less dangerous people, but I've met people who have his sense of humor almost. So I like that. So she actually rams him with the car, which runs him off road, and she's all happy, and she's like, screaming and cheering in the front seat like she's just won. And of course, and I like that it does feel like maybe she did just get a little victory, but he does get out and aims the gun, and I'm like, that's a hard shot to hit, like if he's going to try and hit her. But of course he doesn't try and hit her, he just has to shoot the tire. And stops the car. So sure enough, it flips the car. He comes up. He lets her crawl out and just shoots her there, point blank, and she's dead. So this is where like I have one kind of weird complaint about the structure of the film. Is I do think it's weird how at this point we're quite late on in the film. There's not a lot of time left, but we've not dealt with Greg. That's not Greg. Sorry, Ben, the male character, right? And we cut back to Ben, and he's like, he's kind of strung up. He's got like some nails in his wrists. He's sort of like strung up to the wall. It's like crucified almost. Yeah, kind of. And he sort of pulls his hands off, and it's very painful. And I thought, okay, so the back half of the movie is essentially split into three sections. Then you got Liz, who's kind of teams up with Kestie, but is mainly her section, and then you've got Kestie's section on her own, and then Ben's going to have his section. And I thought, well, the opening of the movie implied that no one survived really, so we're going to have another section where he's like almost going to get away, but he's going to get to him. It's whatever, right? But that's not what happens. Ben, because Mick's off dealing with Kestie, Ben actually just kind of stumbles out of the camp and gets to, and sort of like falls asleep next to the road, and then like some, foreign couple like pick him up in their van, and we actually get this weird coda scene where he actually does make it his way back, and he's like he's under suspicion for killing the friends, and then he's let go after a while, but the police never find evidence. We get like the true crime thing where it's like, police searched for months but never found any evidence of this location because he couldn't be specific. He didn't know where he was. And they never found bodies, they never found any evidence of this guy, and it tries to do that thing where he's still out there somewhere. The final shot happens and it's like just Mick walking through the outback, hence Wolf Creek 2, for example, is the thing. So my complaint about the structure here is I feel like it's really weird that Greg, that's not Greg, why does he keep saying Greg? It's because the director's name's Greg. I think it's weird that Ben is like the ultimate survivor, but he gets almost nothing to do for most of the second half of the movie. He's just missing. We just come back to him and it's like, oh, he gets to live. He gets to live because the guy's too busy killing the others. And there's very little, like, I don't know, like, I have, like, he's the character I like the least out of the three. I didn't really like any of them that much, but at least throughout the survival stuff, I grew to care about the other two a bit more, because it's like, oh, they're actually trying to survive. When Kestie ran him off the road, I was like, oh yeah, I'm kind of rooting for you a little bit now, because you're fighting back. You're being proactive, kind of like we said. That's why we kind of like Liz a little bit. Whereas Ben just kind of leaves and gets away without much of a fight, and it's not even that hard.
I wonder though. I mean, if that's partly because again, they say it's based on a true story. I don't know how true it is, but I mean, if this is part of the true story that this is the only character that survives, then I don't know if that's why they kind of have to do that ending.
I don't know. It feels unfulfilling, and I don't know if you want to read into it in a bullshit way and say it's like, oh, it's dead easy for the man. Women have a hard time, but the man gets to just walk away. I don't think the movie's actually trying to say anything like that, but it's the only thing I can think of where, let's say it was trying to make a political statement here, it was commenting, but it isn't doing that. I'm saying this right now. What I am saying is bullshit. I am just trying to find some reason to justify this weird ending where he just gets away this easily when the two women had to like fight and scrape and ultimately get killed and don't get to escape.
I mean, I don't know if at this point, like, he's just too done with these people, or that he just feels like he needs to get away, or maybe cover his tracks or something. If because now if there's like multiple dead bodies on the road and stuff, and multiple people that could be missing, if he thinks maybe it's just better to kind of walk away from the whole situation. Interestingly,
I went to Wiki to look up the true story, but it described the killer in the film as xenophobic, which actually makes sense because most of his victims do seem to be tourists, because Ben's Australian, but the two girls are meant to be from England, so so they're tourists. Did you not notice the difference in accents, Tim? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I did not.
I'd like to think you could tell the difference between me and an Australian.
I mean, sure. If it was a better movie where I like the characters more, and maybe I'd pay closer attention to that.
Right. So I've looked this up.
I didn't really think about it.
It says it's loosely based on this thing here. So I'm going to read the Wikipedia entry for the Backpacker Murders, which is what this is loosely based on.
Okay.
Before I read this, though, I'm going to assume that none of the characters are actually based on, none of the victims are actually based on real victims or anything like that. The Backpacker Murders were a spate of serial killings that took place in New South Wales, Australia between 1989 and 1993, committed by Ivan Milat. The bodies of 7 missing young people aged 19 to 22 were discovered partially buried in the Belanglo State Forest. So right away there's an inconsistency, because this movie's like, oh, no one's ever found. Like, they found all these bodies. Blah, blah, blah. 5 of the victims were foreign backpackers, 3 German, 2 British. Well, 2 British so this kind of, and 2 were Australian travellers from Melbourne. Milat was convicted of the murders from 27th July 1996 and currently serving 7 consecutive life sentences, as well as 18 years without parole. So he's never getting out. He's dying in prison. So Yeah, and obviously seven murders is horrible. Like, he killed 7 people, but the movie makes it like he's killed, like 50 at least. So,
like he just has this giant garage of like abandoned cars and stuff, and
yeah, I think is very loosely based on this. I wonder if like the whole idea of him towing people and tricking them into like thinking he's helping them. I wonder if that was yeah. Oh, it does say actually he stabbed someone in the back that would have paralyzed her. So I mean, I guess that kill.
Okay.
Is based on something that kind of happened. But I guess the question is, did he intentionally try to paralyze her, or was it just he was stabbing her and it caused that? Was it actually that thought out in that sense?
Yeah, because I guess what I was assuming is that the true story aspect was like maybe 3 people get kidnapped, and the one male guy survives and has a story that's never that they're never able to find evidence of. So that's what I assumed happened, but it sounds like that's not really what the deal was.
It says people accepted rides from him, so I guess that part's kind of based on thing as well. I'm just control Fing the word survivor to see if there is actually someone who doesn't know what there was. At least they didn't use that word anyway. Yeah. Apparently, he's got cancer. The killer's got cancer. Actually, I just read that at the bottom of the page.
Oh well, you hate to see that happen. Yeah. It's. I mean, I guess you kind of come to expect that with these horror movies. Whenever they say based on a true story, it's like in the very loosest of terms.
I wonder how much the personality of the killer, if at all, is based on the dude, or if that's just a creation of the director and the actor to be like, hey, let's give him some personality. This is a weird tidbit here. In May 2011, Magrath went on a 9-day hunger strike, losing 25 kilograms in an unsuccessful attempt to be given a PlayStation.
Okay. That's
interesting. That's interesting. He wanted a PlayStation really badly.
What year was it?
That was 2011. So it would have been a PS3, I assume he was trying to get his hands on.
Yeah. I was going to say like PS1. Jeez.
What do you think? Australia's like 10 years behind everyone else or something?
Well, no, but maybe this guy just wanted to play some classics like Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy VII, and he knew that it might be a little harder on a modern system.
Okay.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night, of course.
To be fair, the PS3 can play PS1 games, so I mean, you can do that on there anyway.
True. That's right.
So yeah. No, that's interesting. So it sounds like there is this that's this serial killer who they've loosely based this on, but it's not. It doesn't sound like the exact event is
So I mean that makes it. I guess that makes like the whole Ben part even weirder, because I assumed why it felt like a little off was because it was emulating the true story. But if there really is no true aspect of that, then it does feel like a really weird little end to the movie.
Yeah, I'm skimming it just to see if there was like anyone who survived who like set them on a trail of the killer, but did
it say when he...
Hold on a second. This part may actually be someone who's done. On the 13th of November 1993, police received a call from Paul Onions, 24 in the UK. On the 25th of January 1990, Onions had been backpacking in Australia and, while hitchhiking from Liverpool Station towards Mildura, had accepted a ride south of the Casula from a man known as Only as Bill, south town of Mittagong, and less than 1 kilometre from the Belango State Forest. Bill stopped and pulled out a revolver and some ropes, stating it was a robbery, at which point Onions managed to flee while Bill pursued and shot at him. So yeah, someone did run away and survive. But obviously, this incident sounds nothing like what Ben went through, obviously.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. Onions flagged down Joanne Berry, a passing motorist, and together they sped off and described the assailant and his vehicle to the Bowral police. On 13th of April 1994, detectives refound a note regarding Onion's call and sought the original report from the Bowral police, but it was missing. Fortunately, a constable had recorded details on her notebook. Onion's statement was corroborated by Berry, who had also contacted the investigation team. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, there was a male survivor. So I guess that's why Ben's ending's the way it is. But it's just weird that he doesn't have like Like, they could still have had him like fight for his survival though. He could have still encountered them and like had to win and get away, or barely survive. But he just kind of stumbles out and gets away. It's weird after everyone else has been through this hell.
It's very abrupt, and like the opening scene of him like kind of having to pull himself or push himself, or whatever you would say, free of like the nails and stuff. It is very gruesome and harsh, but then after that it is just very like abrupt of like, oh, and then he escapes.
Yeah, that's it. And it didn't. And also, this doesn't sound like he was ever a suspect. It's not like, because he wasn't with anyone who was killed. He was just someone who survived. So I guess that's what they're going for with that detail. But all right, well, the last 10 minutes of this have been this fact find. The back half of the movie is definitely better, and I'm glad that it doesn't really match up with the real crimes that much, because I think that makes me feel a bit more uneasy. I'm like, I love horror movies, but I don't necessarily want horror movies that are based on real people's murders, to a proper degree. Like,
that's what I was gonna say is weird. Would be like if these women if they were the actual victims, and then it's like, especially if it's like, oh, we don't know exactly what happened to him, so here's what some guy just thought up. That is kind of weird, but it's I feel like maybe it's always better to just like, if you want to be inspired or something by a real life event, that you then kind of spin off into your own thing. That always seems like a little better than if you're just like straight up basing it on something that seems like a little tackier. Like for a while there's like those run of like serial killer movies with like like Gacy and Dahmer and stuff. Like those always feel kind of weird, versus something like Silence of the Lambs, where you have like, oh, well, here's like this fictional character that was slightly based off like this thing or that thing, but it feels maybe a little less gruesome. It's
a fine line, because I feel like if you're going to base something on a real serial killer and you're going to do it accurately, and you want to do it like you want to do the the thing, I feel like you have to go more the thriller route, where you treat it a bit more serious. Because I've been watching Mindhunter, right, and they go to interview serial killers, and they're trying to catch killers, and they're based on real crimes. But of course, this is from the FBI perspective. It is your Silence of the Lambs style of like trying to hunt killers, and it's about the psychology behind it, and it's the dramatized version of all your crime documentaries that you get on your crime channel, which everyone's mother watches, because that's what mothers watch. They watch the ID channel and the Discovery Investigation. But like but I think when you turn it into a horror movie, and when you turn it into the roller coaster of thrills of the actual like trying to escape, and almost not quite the literal torture porn, because it's not like Hostel or Saw, but the idea of like sort of as an audience relishing in, oh, the fingers got cut off, because that happens at one point, is Liz gets her fingers cut off, and it's kind of this sort of like, horror movies, but you don't want to kind of cheer and go horror movies when it's like based on a real person. So
exactly,
so I'm glad that that this, like, it takes inspiration, but it's not like a hard retelling of the it's like, hey, we're going to take the terror of the situation that some of these people went through, and we're going to like do our own thing with it.
And I think the problem I have with this, though, is that I feel like they try to have it both ways, where I agree with what you're saying, that is good, but then I feel like they still try to present it like, oh no, this is true, because they always have this stuff in the beginning, like this based on a true story, and then having like the little coda at the end with it.
To me this just feels more like I mean, this is obviously much closer to something that happened, but you remember how at the start of The Strangers it said based on a true story, but all the true story is that the director, when he was a kid, someone knocked on his door and asked for someone who wasn't there, and that's all that happened in real life, and he based the entire movie around how creepy that was. And don't get me wrong, I think that's a great inspiration for a movie. I think it's bullshit to call it based on a true story, but that's a great inspiration for a horror movie. This is much closer to being a legit true story, just because it's actually like I feel like I feel like if you just took away the true story sentences, see if you kept in the rest of it, 30,000 people disappear in Australia every year, 90% are found, but some are never discovered. Like, if you just kept that part and you sort of present it as, no, this is based on some true statistics, right? And then you still have the director talk about how it's kind of loosely based on this thing, and you're taking some of that real fear and putting it into a horror movie. You can still do all that stuff, but I think saying that it's based on a true story makes it, you have this expectation of accuracy, or at least you feel like you should, even though most movies don't. Most movies do take creative license, they do wacky things with it. So, and sometimes like it's for a point. I don't know if you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood yet, Tim.
Of course, yeah.
You did. See, that changes some things in history, but that does it to make a point. There's actually a dramatic reason for it, where it's saying, hey, that's, Tarantino likes doing that, obviously, but and for me, when it changed things at the end of the movie, that actually kind of made the movie work for me, because up until that point I was wondering kind of what the point of the movie was, and I was enjoying it, but the ending kind of gave it all context, whereas whereas this isn't got making a point by changing anything. It's just this is what works in my horror movie, so that's what we're going to do. So no. But I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know if I've got much more to add. I think it's a decent movie, because the back half is a decently well-made horror movie. Surprisingly so, given that this guy went on to direct The Darkness, because The Darkness is one of the worst edited and directed movies I have seen in my time. We gave that worst movie a 2016. We gave it like a straight 1 out of 10. It was a disaster. This is really bad. This is much better than that, because it's not. I mean, you may not like it. It's not a great movie even, but it's not a terrible movie by any stretch.
There's a lot about it that I don't really think speaks to me, that it's the type of film I usually like to watch, but at the same time I'm not really degrading the quality of the filmmaking. Like, it's it's still very competently made. It's just it doesn't necessarily work for me.
All right. So we'll rate it then. What are you giving it, Timmy? What you?
Since I don't really like since I don't necessarily like it, but I don't really hate it, I'm just gonna go right down the middle and give it a straight 5. I think there are a lot of problems with it, but it's still competently made. And then when it does get to the horror stuff, I do think most of it is done fairly well. But I'm still not crazy about it. I don't really enjoy it. So just straight 5 out of 10.
I think if you cut out like 20 minutes out of the first 40, like I feel like if it got to the stuff quicker, and didn't even necessarily change anything about the horror stuff, just cut out like 20 minutes of the bullshit at the start, I feel like the movie would work a lot better for me, and I'd probably give it a pretty reasonable rating. But it does take so long to get to the meat of the film that and it actively just makes me less interested in it, because it's fine if the characters aren't that interesting if you get to the horror stuff quickly, because like I say, once they're like being proactive and trying to survive, I just inherently like them more, because they're doing things, they're being smart,
definitely,
and it doesn't matter that they're not that in depth as far as like character traits go, but because we spend so much time with them just talking and bonding and whatever, it's like, oh my god, these characters are so boring. Because of that, this is tough for me. I think I'm going to go with a 6. I am going to go another point above you. I think it's a decent movie, with some decent to good horror stuff in the back half, with a notable villain who's kind of fun and got some charisma. He's very different from other horror villains as well, which I think I like. I've never seen Wolf Creek 2, but I'm sure we'll do it at some point. It makes sense for us to do it eventually. So we'll see how that goes. So that's cool. And maybe we'd even do a TV show, because the TV show I think is only 3 episodes, so it's basically a movie.
Maybe.
It's basically a movie. It's a 2-hour movie, I think, all in. So
okay. If it's 3 episodes, I can do it, but much more than that, it's going to be tough.
I think it's either more than that, or is it, because Greg McLean's only credited for 3 episodes, so I'm assuming it's only 3 episodes. Okay. I think it's meant to be quite short. Unless he just did 3 and then left, and then other people did the rest, but I don't think so. He seems like someone who this is his baby, and this is what he cares
Yeah.
about. But that's us. That has been the show. Get us on Twitter at Screams Midnight. There's a lot of funny stuff on there from me and Tim, so do go check it out and keep in touch with us. You can send us on questions to that Twitter at Screams Midnight, or you can send us questions to mftvquestions@gmail.com if you got something longer you want us to do. Especially if you want to send some in time for Oktoberthon, we might do some, maybe even do like just a question only episode towards the end of the month. Sure. If we get enough questions in the email and via Twitter. So send in questions, mftvquestions@gmail.com, and we'll maybe do a question special at the end of October. Again, something else special for the Oktoberthon. It's a little bit different. So that is us though. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.